What if the reason most budgets fail isn't because people lack discipline, motivation, or intelligence, but because the system they're using was never designed for the world we actually live in? For decades, one simple formula has been repeated like an unbreakable law of personal finance. Spend 50% of your income on needs, 30% on wants, and save 20% for the future. It sounds balanced, responsible, and reassuring. Almost too perfect. But here's the mystery no one talks about. If this rule is truly the best budgeting method, why are so many people who follow it still stressed about money? Why are millions living paycheck to paycheck, even while doing everything right? And why does this rule seem to work flawlessly for some people, yet completely fall apart for others? To understand that, we can't just explain the 50-30-20 rule. We have to tell its story. To understand where this rule came from, you have to step back into a time when personal finance was far less complicated than it is today. In the late 20th century, the average household faced a very different financial reality. Housing was relatively affordable compared to income. Healthcare costs, while rising, had not yet reached crisis levels. College tuition was expensive, but not life-altering in the way it often is now. And wages, while imperfect, generally grew alongside the cost of living. Yet even in this environment, people were struggling with money. Credit cards were becoming widespread. Debt was easier to access, and financial education was almost non-existent. Most advice was either extremely technical or painfully vague. People didn't want spreadsheets filled with hundreds of categories. They wanted something simple, something human, something they could actually stick to. That's the world in which the 50-30-20 rule began to take shape. It didn't come from Wall Street models or complex economic theories. It came from studying real families. In the early 2000s, legal scholar and bankruptcy expert Elizabeth Warren, along with her daughter Amelia Warren Tyagi, began analyzing why so many middle-class families were going bankrupt despite having two incomes. What they found was unsettling. The problem wasn't reckless spending or luxury lifestyles, it was fixed costs. Housing, healthcare, transportation, and childcare were quietly consuming larger and larger portions of household income. Families didn't feel like they were overspending, but there was less room to breathe every year. Instead of telling people to cut out every small pleasure or track every single dollar, they proposed a framework. 50% of income would go to needs, things you can't avoid. 30% would go to wants, things that make life enjoyable. And 20% would go towards savings and paying down debt. The genius of this rule wasn't precision. It was balance. It acknowledged that people aren't robots. They need flexibility. They need room to enjoy life without guilt. And for a while, this rule worked remarkably well. As the idea spread, it quickly became one of the most popular budgeting methods in the world. Financial blogs praised it. Apps were built around it. Influencers simplified it into colorful charts and viral posts. And it genuinely helped many people gain control of their finances. In an economy where major expenses were still manageable, the 50-30-20 rule felt empowering rather than restrictive. It gave people a sense of order and control. But quietly, beneath the surface, the conditions that made this rule effective were beginning to change. The breaking point didn't come all at once. It crept in slowly. Housing prices began rising faster than wages. Rent consumed larger portions of income. Healthcare premiums increased year after year. Student loan balances ballooned. Childcare costs reached levels that rivaled rent or mortgage payments. For many households, the math simply stopped working. Needs alone began to consume 60, 70, sometimes even 80% of income. And at that point, the rule collapses. Not because people are failing, but because the assumptions behind the rule no longer match reality. You can't force your needs into 50% if your rent alone is 45% of your income. You can't save 20% if survival already consumes everything you earn. This is where the story becomes uncomfortable, because instead of questioning the system, many people internalize the failure. They felt irresponsible, undisciplined, or bad with money. But the truth is far simpler and far harsher. No budgeting framework can fix a structural gap between income and essential expenses. The rule wasn't broken. The economy outgrew it. As more people struggled, new fixes emerged, but most of them missed the point. Some advice said to just cut wants even further, as if joy and quality of life were optional. Others said to earn more, as if higher-paying jobs were instantly available to everyone. Budgeting apps added more categories, more complexity, more pressure. Hustle culture told people to grind harder. But none of these address the core issue. The 50-30-20 rule assumes a world where needs are reasonably priced. And for many people, that world no longer exists. This is where modern parallels become impossible to ignore. Across income levels, the same pattern repeats. Fixed costs rise first. Discretionary spending gets squeezed. Savings becomes optional. Debt fills the gap. Even people earning well above the median income report financial stress. Not because they're reckless, but because the structure of expenses has fundamentally changed. The rule didn't cause this problem, but it reveals it. It acts like a diagnostic tool, showing where the pressure points are. And that leads to the most important realization of all. The 50-30-20 rule was never meant to be a rigid law. It was meant to be a guide, a way to evaluate your financial reality. If you can fit your life into the framework, that's great. If you can't, that's not a failure, that's information. It tells you where the system is breaking down. It tells you whether the problem is spending, income, or structure. Used correctly, the rule doesn't judge you. It helps you see clearly. If you want more videos like this, deep dives into the psychology and systems behind money, make sure to subscribe. Hit the like button and share your thoughts in the comments.